Oh, hey there, you caught me red-handed testing some new X16 software. We'll have to save this one for later. Alright, so in 2025, there was actually some really great software developed for the X16. I'm just going to highlight and demo a few of them here. Alright, first up, Dushan developed his absolutely perfect rendition of Solitaire, complete with drag and drop cards. Dushan has been developing X16 software for many years. He's did a series of crazy games a few years ago, like Crazy Lander was one of his games done in BASIC. So this is a really solid version of the game. You can go back to the options by clicking at the top or directly start a new game by clicking at the bottom left there. If you complete the deck, he even does the card bounce effect like in the Windows version, which is pretty challenging on a sprite system like this. So later in that year around Thanksgiving, I happened to come across Roman Werner's pesky version of Solitaire for the C64 that was done in regular CBM V2 BASIC. I noticed it was only about 230 lines long and included mouse support, so I was curious on what it would take to port that over to the X16 BASIC. Also, I'd never used custom fonts on the C64, so reviewing Werner's code showed me how all that was done. So as I was porting it over, I converted it over to bassload format, so I didn't have to deal with line numbers. All the stuff in here that is still lowercase is all from Werner's original version. There were just a few differences to address, and the port started off easy. But then I learned how the C64 indexes colors is quite different than on the X16. The C64 has a different set of addresses dedicated to color, whereas the X16 Vera is a little more PC style, where the color is intermixed with the symbol data. Anyway, it took a couple weekends, but I think the resulting port turned out pretty well. It's very playable on the X16, and you get that numeric seed feature where you specify a seed and you can replay the interesting sessions later. My grandmother taught me how to play solitaire and other card games. It's a fond memory I still have of her. If you're not familiar with the game, it's a solo game, and you lay out the shuffle deck of cards in this standard setup. From the draw pile, you're looking for the next lower number of the shown face cards on each of these columns. But the trick is you have to alternate colors between black and red. You can move stacks around if they satisfy the alternating color rule, and another rule is that only kings can be placed on an empty column. Meanwhile, you're also trying to stack the foundation pile in the corner, starting off with the lowest cards first of each suite. I have no idea how anyone ever came up with this as a game. Apparently in Europe it was called Patience. So like here, you can place this red 8 at the top of this card pile below the black 9 over on this column. Not all shuffle decks are winnable, so the game does kind of teach that sometimes you just have to give up and start over. Sometimes you can get stuck by placing cards too quickly onto the foundation pile, so there are some subtle little strategies on things to watch out for that you learn the more you play the game. The random seed for a round is only revealed at the end when all the cards are placed onto the foundation piles. That way you know it is a winnable deal, and you can try again using less moves. If you do want to give up and start over, you press this little square icon down in the corner. It's kind of like an on-off switch. You can also Control C and break back to basic and do a listing. One thing I'll point out is at the very end, in basic I have these data binary sequences for the mouse icon sprite. I wanted it to be a little self-contained program with no external files to drag around. You can adjust the icon if you want, like here I'll add a few little pixels. And now when I run again, you see they show up as the icon is initialized at the start of the program. And while I'm here, another thing to show is that when listing a long program, you can hold Control to slow down that listing, and then do Control-C to stop the listing entirely. Most CP/M systems have this feature, so the X16 borrows that. Alright, next we have GalaX16 by Roy Eltham. This game makes good use of the gamepad and is a complete package with music and audio effects, and it really has that classic arcade feel and style. Roy wrote this program using Prog 8, which is a kind of a new programming language designed for these 8-bit systems. So using the actual source code here, here's a quick preview of what Prog 8 looks like. It's got C-style functions and special zero-page designators. Here's what its inline assembly looks like. You can specify imports, and it has data structures. Here are Pascal-style subroutines that don't return values. So it's a very full-featured language. Alright, so let's go see how this code performs. Roy's still working on this game to add power-ups and other features, but it's very playable right now. Next up is Deep Scavenger by Mark Weidman, who also wrote the very excellent PETSCII game for the X16 several years ago. Mark is also a storyteller, so like in many of the classic console games, he includes an interesting backstory. The gist here is you end up mining these asteroids to get out of debt. This game is all in assembly code and really well done. One of the early arcade games in 1979 was called Asteroids, and this game is a variation on that. But you have to collect these crystals along the way, being careful not to also blast the crystals by mistake. You don't have to blast every little asteroid. The crystals come from the larger ones, and after you've collected all of them, a yellow portal opens up to the next level. Denmark also released a game called AsterDuel. Essentially, it's a two-player version of the asteroid game. You collect these crystals, then return to power up your base, and then use those to destroy your opponent's base. It doesn't have AI yet for the second player, and unfortunately I don't have the second controller right here with me. But I have played it with 2 players, and it plays very smoothly, and it's really fantastic to see a nice multiplayer game for this system. Next is something that isn't a game, but it's a wonderful synthesizer program, also by Dushan. He's the same guy who did the graphical solitaire game I mentioned earlier. He has the full source code available as a tutorial. And here's a sample of the assembler code, which looks like he's using the CC65 assembler, or CA65. What this program really demos is how the YM chip inside the X16 is really a full-featured digital piano. So let's give it a whirl. The YM chip is limited to 8 channels, so that's the max number of notes you can play at the same time. Okay, so I'm no periphractic, but I can jam a little bit. Yeah, it's a work in progress. So here's a sample of a few of the other instruments available, all pre-programmed in the ROMs. Alright, now a couple other exciting highlights for 2025. KG SWS issued out another KG 3D update, number 21. He's added doors and a menu overlay. The memory requirement has crept up a little bit from 512K to a full megabyte. That might just be due to having an even larger level now. He has his code available for preview, but not for the general public release. I'll link it in the video description. This is all really great work. I was browsing through the source and I noticed some sound related code, so I know that is coming. Okay, last up we have a full port of Another World by Rainer de Temple. This uses the original MS-DOS versions of the data files and adapts them to the X16. It's about a 5-minute one-time conversion process that runs on the system. It's a very faithful port with the full intro sequence and playable with the gamepad. I never had an Amiga, so I played this game originally on the Sega Genesis in 1993. You get teleported to this alien world and just have to survive using your wits in real time. Like an old Sierra game, nearly any wrong move gets you killed. The game really picks up after you get the pistol, which has two special features. It can generate a temporary shield, or you hold it down longer and it powers up a shot that can blast through walls. Alright, there's one other major highlight for 2025 released by Gilbert Vera, and it's a real nice indie developer success story. Supported by a Kickstarter, Gilbert has completed a game called Hazard Let Us Out, making it available on both the original Nintendo NES and the X16. And Hazard also marks the first cartridge game officially available for the X16, so that's a great milestone to finally see. So there's lots of activity going on for the X16, and already now in 2026 I see some exciting new things on the horizon. So I'd like to give a huge thanks to those involved in continued ROM and emulator development, and all the very talented folks out there that have shared great software like this for the Commander X16. Alright, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.